This is Bumping Into That Sound.
Welcome back to Bumping Into That Sound, the show where the stories behind the music can take centre stage. My name is Francis. Today we're diving deep into the world of legendary Guitar Tone. He's worked with the who's who of rock, and chances are you've heard his amps on your favourite albums or tours. I'm talking about the iconic amp builder Frank Levi. Known for his groundbreaking mods and unmistakable ear, Frank has shaped the sound of some of the most iconic players in the rock world. Of course, no story about Frank is complete without mentioning the famous S.I.R rental amps, or S.I.R rental amps, the mystery machines that fueled some of the greatest records and tours of the 80s and 90s. For years, fans and players alike have debated who actually modded what, and today we'll go straight to the source and dive deep into the history around numbers 34, 36 and 39. This story isn't just about the past. Joining me is Brian Zircon, Frank's apprentice. Not only did Brian learn from the industry master, he was given all of Frank's documents and files after his passing. Together, we're going into the stories from the inside of the workshop, stories about the man, the mods, and digging into the myths and facts around those legendary amps. And towards the end, Brian shares some tone samples from one of Frank's masterpiece custom-made Plexi amps. Brian's also been busy working with the remaining members of the Doors and shares some stories into some of the legendary Hammond organs that he also owns. This episode isn't a quick brush over. It's not a dot point summary. This is a meandering journey that offers a deep and true insight. It's built for those that want to dig deeper and want to learn the history of Frank Levi and his work. From what I can tell, Frank was one of those guys that didn't need to shout or boast about his knowledge or who he had worked for. Quietly confident in his abilities and achievements, and not all too worried about what other people thought. Perhaps because those that knew all too well how good he was, and that's why he got his hands on so many iconic amplifiers. So crank it up and let's get into it. Well, look, what I'd love to do, if you're up for it, is I've got a whole swag of questions about yourself and obviously
Absolutely.
about Frank.
Sure.
So if we start from, I suppose we might go in a couple of little different directions. If we start from the point of how you met him and how you two came together as I suppose you were an apprentice under his wing.
Yeah. So I had been building my career as a part of the cultural tapestry of music for a few years before meeting him. I love old rock, and I love pop, and I love blues, and I love all this stuff, and I am just insufferably obsessed about certain things. And when I got obsessed about 80s rock and roll, as I did with other things, there's a desire to get closer. I think when we have artists that impact us, and help us feel like we can express ourselves, that changes the game for us. For me, I started writing and performing. I'm a songwriter. I own a record label, Sunwing Records, as you may have also seen.
Yep.
Touring show, all this stuff, just getting closer to music. But before any of that, I was a guitar player. And as guitar players go, you want to find your voice. And the most saddening thing about guitar is that before you even pick up the instrument as an amateur, you hear it. You know what you want to sound like.
Yeah.
And for so many players, they spend their life chasing this sound,
Yeah.
It's like the title of your podcast. It's all about the sound,
Yep.
And so basically, if you want the long story, which you can cut down, of course. Before I was somebody, before, helping the Doors get back together, which happened this year, we took Ray Manzarek's Hammond organ out to the whiskey, or becoming a famous Dungeons and Dragons character under my real name for some odd reason, because I had friends in Texas that were programming, and releasing my album later in the year, getting a touring show. Before all of that, I was a 14-year-old kid. And I had a little white Stratocaster and this cheap little Excel amp. And I heard Guns N' Roses for the first time. And I was like, man, that is something. That is the sound. Or at least it felt like it, because it was so expressive. Whatever was going on in those records, it really felt like there was a relationship between Slash and his instrument.
Yep.
And so obviously on a Stratocaster through a very cheap amplifier, that's nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
Compared to what you're looking for. And so it was just mixes of emotions of this range of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting the notes right, but something's still wrong. And then a younger player is going to blame themselves. They're going to say, okay, well, this doesn't sound right. They don't know it's the way the amp is built. They don't even know to respect the amplifier. My friend Perry Margolef was involved just last week in the biggest donation of electric guitars to a museum institution of all time, himself
Wow.
and his business partner. And I called him to congratulate him. He said, we're still working on getting people to know the amp, to know that the amp is important, to respect the amplifier as an equal part of this. So I didn't know any of that. Anyway, so I'm 14. I'm playing these songs. I'm learning all of this stuff. And I start digging and I start reading. And so I found out what a Marshall amp was. And then I found out what a plexi was. And so I bought a Marshall. With the help of my parents, I did yard care. Bought a Marshall and a 70s Les Paul. This was 15 years ago. And it was a solid state Marshall. It was a very cheap one. And it didn't sound right. So I'm like, but I got the Marshall. And then it's this progression, right? As many guitar players take, where they get to that next step and they've got all this hope. And sometimes they just suck as guitar players, but sometimes they know what they're doing. Their equipment is limiting them. So I read about plexis. I was like, okay, what amp did Jimmy Page use? What did Pete Townsend use? What did, any of these other guitarists use? And then you find out how much they are, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this was still.
Yeah.
So, and then I set about, at that point, I had a band going. We did 60s to 80s covers. And I had a plexi built for me by Seriatone.
Okay. Yep.
And I was already aware that there were modders out there, that there were people who took these things to another level. But I got burned by a guy in Dallas building that amp. I took it to him to finish putting in the transformers and the power caps. It's also kind of where the tech thing kind of started too, is because I had these bad experiences. It's like a mechanic. If you go to a bad mechanic, like I think that's how Lamborghini started. Like he went to Ferrari and said, hey, this is what I want. This is what I would like. And he got rebuffed by Enzo, and it motivated him enough. The emotion motivated him to do his own thing. So I took this plexi down to Dallas, and I worked very hard to pick the right components. And I brought it to this guy, and he said he was a mod person. I'm gonna leave his name out of it. I think he's dead now anyway. But anyway, so we go down there, and I drop off this amp. Like I go back into the back of this shop, and he doesn't even look at me, this guy. And he's watching a basketball game, and he's not even looking at the amp. He's digging into a super reverb or a twin or something. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel welcome here. I don't know what this is going to be like. And he had his own line of amps, but it was all about gain for him. He was doing the Caswell thing, which is great, in 1985. Like there's more that has happened since then, but this particular fella that I was working with never learned beyond that. He just added fire to it, and that was it. And he kept trying to talk me into all this stuff that didn't really sound all that good. And I was like, eh. So I leave the amp with him for 3 or 4 weeks. I come back, I pick it up, and I plug into it. I'm like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm at that point, I'm a 17 or 18-year old, and I have worked the limited musculature of a post-pubescent body
Yeah.
into yard work and food service trying to pay for this crap. And it just, I guess the best way I could explain it, because I made him keep it mostly stock. It wasn't like it was his fault, although he did apparently forget to wire some stuff in, but another tech fixed it. Anyway, it was like showing up to a drag race with a stock muscle car, an American Camaro, and thinking to yourself, this is going to be enough, but it just rolled off the dealership that way. And
Yeah.
then your opponent here has a custom fitted, custom hot rodded car. You don't stand a chance.
No, the worlds apart.
Yeah. So throwing it back into your realm for a moment, do you have experiences that relate to that? What has music been like for you? Have you had moments that are very similar?
It's what you're explaining is so similar. It's almost like the voice in my head at periods of time. So I totally understand that uh, borderline obsession, of the hunger, the thirst. When you hear something, you want to
Yeah.
know more about it, and you're chasing it, and it's this relentless pursuit of trying to find out, but why, but how, and I must have.
Right. And after I finish the story, I do have materials prepared to set some of the internet straight as well, because I know a lot of people have been asking about what's going on and where's Frank and how does Frank and Tim relate, and we'll get to all that, of course. So, and thank you for your personal feedback as well. Yeah, it's a common challenge, I think, among
Yeah.
musicians. So anyway, so I get this thing. I'm disappointed as hell. I'm like, I'm just gonna give up. I'm gonna keep playing this amp. I'm gonna play in my band. I'm just gonna focus on the music. And so we book in for this bowling alley. Now I'm 17. The guitarist is 14, the other guitarist in the band. He's got an old high watt. And so you had a 17-year-old with a plexi, 14-year-old with a high watt in the early 2010s, which is, I see now why Frank freaked out. So what happened was we played this gig and we filmed it, we videoed it, and we put it on Instagram of all places. Now, at this point, again, I had obsessed over Guns N' Roses. I'd obsessed over S.I.R. I chose the plexi because it was the overlap between the 60s rock, the 70s, and the 80s. It was the common denominator, and finally became its apex in the 80s under these wizards. You read about Tim Caswell and Frank Levi, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to find a mod god. I need to find somebody like that, because you don't think to yourself as a 17-year-old you're ever going to get to that level or meet these people. Full schedules, thousands of dollars. They're half a country away, or in your case, continents away.
Yeah.
So it's all very removed. So we post this video, and there's this account, Elf S7 or whatever. I would love to hear your music. And I had just been burned by some people who were less than gracious at an open mic. I was very cagey. I ignored it. I didn't. It's a comment on this video of us playing this gig at a bowling alley. Stage out on the lanes, plexing a high watt, And I don't remember what the video was. I think it was like Yardbirds or something we were playing. I don't know. Heart Full of Soul, maybe. And this account had left all these comments on that video, on a personal account, on the guitarist's account. And this other guitar player is very dry, and he would never call me. I remember this like it was yesterday. He would never call me. He'd always text. So one day I get a call from my guitar player, the other one with a high watt, who's also a fellow obsessive. And he's like, and I'm going to use my actual name, Cody, He's like, Cody, I'm like, yeah, Cameron, what's going on? This guy has gone on now. Cameron went on to become the assistant tour manager for the Flaming Lips, but we were all kids, But he's like, Cody, and I'm like, yes, what is it? What's going on? He said, you know that guy that's like commenting on all of our Spirits band stuff? And I was like, yeah. He said, you really need to call him. And he left me to it. And so I dig in my DMs and I find a message from this account 4 or 5 days before. And it was a picture of a Plexi. And I say, okay. He wants to talk gear. He knows what the amp is. That's fine. So I start replying. I start typing up this thing, and he sees that I'm in the chat or whatever. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was early enough where you could see where people were in the chat, but oh God, it was just weird timing because I'm typing this message back to him. Like, yeah, Plexis, I really like these, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Pete Townsend, whatever. And then later, he sends me an article on Frank Levi, the wizard, the mod god, all this. I'm like, okay. So I start responding, yeah, that's part of the reason I wanted this amp. I had this amp and I started relaying that in some simple form or fashion. Like, this is the reason I made decisions in my life because of this person in this interview. And then he says, I'm Frank Levi. And I was just, so I start grilling him. I start like going, I'm like, okay, who did you puke on when you were with Yes in the 70s? It's like, no, it's Chris Squier, and he puked on me because I gave him a fat doob. It's all this stuff. And he passed the test, and he gave me his email. And he said, if you're ever in New York and you want that Plexi done right, give me a call. And I still, I've met a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people, done a lot of very interesting things. I had to play with the drummer of the Police this year. I am, by all accounts, unflappable as of now. But going back to that, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, it was the world's connecting because, you understand this as you grow into this, especially if it's older music. You find out all of these beautiful stories and these things that are going on, but then you feel a pang of sadness because you almost feel late to the party. It's a world away. It's not accessible to you. And then the universe or God or whatever you choose to believe, the energy attracts to you, as our conversation has attracted, each other's platforms to us, So I thought about it for 5 minutes and decided that I was going to have to go to New York by the end of the year to see this guy. And I was, still fresh off of the trauma with that other guy, that other amp tech. Because they are mechanics, and a lot of them are very cagey. I know Frank was very secretive. And when I did more research back to him, it was intimidating. He was an old New York guy, and oof. So anyway, would you like me to keep going on that?
100%.
Okay.
I want to go as deep as you're willing to go, and as long as you've got free time. So
Sure. I blocked out the evening for this. So okay. So anyway, let's relive this. Let's see. So because this is also historical. I mean, this is on the record. I'm taking this seriously. I have facts prepared. My goodness. For any other questions. So I go to New York, and I brought a 79 Les Paul Custom, which I think Chicago Music Exchange used as their demo guitar, kind of like there was an old Dan Electro and Manny's Music, I think, that Dylan and everybody played. I have the Fuchsia Les Paul from Chicago Music Exchange that was used in demos and all this stuff. That was like my baseline guitar, and I know why they used it for that, because the T-tops in that guitar are so balanced. And that was the main guitar I played with the Plexi. And I brought my pedal board and a cab simulator, a Mesa Boogie, because I've already been working on signal chain stuff to get like studio quality tone live without the directional shit of a cabinet. And an Electro Voice hi-fi PA speaker. I take this and I go with all of this equipment to New York. And my parents came because again, I'm 17. You know, we didn't talk price. We didn't talk locale. I had a rough location. He gave me a rehearsal studio. And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, what are we in for? Are we going to exceed the capacity of what we're capable of? You know, I didn't know how much he charged for one. I knew Caswell had done amps at that point in consulting, and he had a lot of stuff out there for thousands of dollars. And there's not really a record on Frank Levi, even now. I mean, now I have all the shit, but at the time we didn't know pricing lists. We didn't have any of that information. He was in the ether. He was so secretive and yet so prolific. I mean, as I'll mention later, I mean, I don't know if anybody else realizes this, but it's like he worked on more than you have ever expected. He did Rat's Round and Round record, like the Out in the Cellar, whatever the hell it's called. I brought out the documents for that today. We have Torches and King's rigs. We have the ground up schematics for that. He was the chief engineer at Hiwatt in 1989. He took over the company, rebuilt it, saved Hiwatt. He did Billy Squier's Squier Fire amp, the amp that prototypes the S.I.R. amp. A lot of people will get into the Caswell Levi debate later, but a lot of people don't understand that circuit is clearly Levi. It predates like Appetite, Use Your Illusion, all of that stuff. Caswell came in, he put in a cascade mod, and Levi did rework that amplifier. It did change. And we have Mike Klink on record. I'll give you this. We have Klink on record saying it was Frank Levi's stuff. I remember the sticker, 39, 36. It wasn't just one amp. And I've got serial numbers. We got other shit we can talk about. So anyway, I'm downloading all this information into my head, finding what I can about this Frank Levi fellow driving to New York. By the time I get there, I realize that this is not just the Guns N' Roses amp tech. This is not just the S.I.R. guy. This is the Forrest Gump of music. He was everywhere and did everything. And it just, until I had the proof, I didn't even believe it. I was like, ugh. Anyway, so we get up there. We go to Rocket Rehearsal Studios. We pull up to the place, and it's a crowded New York sidewalk. It's nuts. It's crazy. There's just all sorts of shit going on. And I still don't even know if I'm in the right place. I'm like, what if I'm being conned? What if he found that email on that one forum where everybody is incessantly mulling over this shit? What if it's somebody? What if they're going to rob me? I mean, it's good gear. It makes sense. I'm going to die. This is great. And we find the address, and it's one of those half number address, like 34-20 or something. It's like a tiny little sliver on this sidewalk of wholesalers, and they got the street cages to close up the storefronts. Long Island City, Story of Queens. And I'm like, what is going on? And we pull up to where the address is. We open the van. We drop all the gear on the sidewalk. My dad and I are standing over it like a couple of hawks. And this door opens. Just this giant freight elevator door opens. And it's like a double wide. You could fit a couple cars in there. And this shirtless Brazilian guy in his 20s, sweaty as all hell, with cargo pants, all these keys, comes up. Hi, you're here to see Frank, right? Come on, get in, come on, let's go. And he didn't even ask me. He just grabs the amp and goes. And my gut just knew it was right. It was okay. It was like, this is proper. This is right. So I didn't even stop him. I walked up there with him. All sense of self-preservation went away because whatever energy was on that elevator came down. It was like, this is real. This is a whole different world you're stepping into, buddy. I get in this elevator and I go up, and it's just shelves and shelves of drums and organs and equipment and all of these things. I'm like, what is happening right now? And it's like, you read about a Ludwig snare drum from the 60s, an acrolite or something, and there's 9 acrolites just right there. And then Hammond B3s, and there's 4 of them on shelves. Like, how do you do that? Where's the forklift, man? And so this guy, his name was Felipe. Felipe, very graciously, okay, we're going to go, da, da, da. He gives me a little floor plan of the place so I don't get lost, which I quickly realized was a factor because there was it's like a maze of this stuff. And you could hear in 4 different languages all these texts. Bang, bang, bang. Bom dia. More. I hear more Portuguese. I hear Spanish over in the corner. I hear, hey, that'll be fucking great. It'll be the greatest thing in the fucking world. Just wait till you get here. I just, all of this stuff is going on, and I'm just like, what the hell? So I walk down, I walk over here, past this, and I end up and I see him, and I'm like, and he's emaciated, he's old, salt and pepper hair, pulled back in a ponytail, and he's on this rolling walker thing, and he's hunched over, looking at this sheet of paper next to this amplifier. And I'm like, okay, all of this culture, all of these moments, all of this emotion, all of this music, the symbol in my brain for all of those feelings and emotions and great moments throughout history are summed up in this frail elder wizard that is physically in front of me. And I'm like, how can a physical human body contain that much power? Wow. So I go up and I introduce myself. Oh, you're here. It's the first thing this man ever says to me. He had invited other people. They either didn't believe it, that it was him, they didn't take the time to go, or they were happy with all of the hack knockoff Guns N' Roses mods on the internet, which are not accurate, as I found out, by the way. This plexi out, and I leave it on his bench, and I turn to go. I'm like expecting fast food. I'm like, I'll get the standard treatment. Whatever he wants to put in this thing, I'll just let him and get out of the way. And I turn to leave, and I say, thank you very much, Mr. Levi. And again, I am assuring you that everything I'm going to tell you in this interview is 100% to the best of my knowledge and ability, absolutely true, which is why I'm trying to make sure that this is all correct. The next thing that happens, he says, wait, where are you going? I said, okay, I was just going to leave you to it. He said, well, aren't you going to get it out of the cabinet? I'm like, here's a frail old man. I should probably help him. Yeah, let me do that. My fingers are shaking at the time. We turn it over. We get the head out. Flip it over. Put it on blocks. Tubes are still in. Now, again, Levi had a reputation of being the amp doctor, the eye doctor. Billy Squier, in the interview with Billy Squier, he says verbatim that Frank Levi reworked his amps over many nights of creative abuse while they were still on. He would tune the amp while you played to you like a tailor would fit a jacket sleeve.
Oh.
And again, and so many people, and I fucking blame Frank for this, because so many people don't know any of this. And the burden has been, again, one of the reasons I'm happy you asked about the podcast. The burden has been difficult to keep this shit under wraps for years with incredible misinformation on the internet. Anyway, I get the amp out of the cabinet. And then I turn to leave again. And he said, well, aren't you going to get your guitar out? And I'm like, oh, shit, he's going to do it. He's going to oh, wow. Now, bear in mind, I did not know this at the time. A lot of people were terrified of him, obviously. But they would literally, they'd either drop the amp and go, if they ever came. Remember, you're here. Not many people showed up. 2, I stayed. He wanted people to stay. He wanted to do the job. Before he was crazy famous for that, that's how he did it. He just tailored the amps. And then finally, it was not just about Guns N' Roses or S.I.R. It was about expression, responsiveness. These amps do so much more than just Sweet Child of Mine. Even though, and yes, apparently, according to Clink, and I still don't believe this because Caswell's got to be in there, but Clink said it was 36, which means that's a Levi amp. And when you play, as I will, and I've also started a recording. Okay. That is your sync. I've got 8 beats there. I've got a studio recording going. As I get into the audio section of this, I've got a ribbon mic on this speaker. So you will have, I'll send over after this is done, you'll have snippets you can use.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Of course. So long story short, well, yeah, I mean, we can't talk about sound without getting you good sound. But I get my guitar out and I plug up to this thing. And he's like, okay, play. And somehow my fingers unfreeze. And I'm like, well, this is just what we do. And I met myself as a professional that day. That it was the same year that I had finished my first real song with a group and it caught off locally and things were happening. But the trust you gain in yourself when you can perform under that level of pressure and unfamiliarity was awesome. Anyway, so I start playing all this stuff and I'm like, do I want to play some of the Guns riffs? Will that piss him off? Even though I really did I was an ignorant person, naively, not a bad thing. That's what I wanted from Frank, because I wanted the GNR tone. I wanted Paradise City. I wanted Welcome to the Jungle. I wanted all that. And I'm a firm believer in God and the universe, not necessarily the dogma of certain religions, but I always seem to run into things in the universe where there's a yes and. When you're asking for something, you often get more than you bargained for. And you have to, it's a learning process to understand, like at 14, I wanted to meet Slash. I've not met Slash yet. Although I will say whenever I saw Guns twice, Frank was like, tell Slash if you see him, he needs to call me back. We stopped speaking on Tuesday or some shit. I'm like, dude, he's like this big. I can't do that. Do you understand? But didn't meet Slash, but I met Frank. And that's the yes and of it, is that he ended up, we reworked it over a day of creative abuse. I got to understand Billy Squier so much more and Warren DeMartini and it really in Slash. I mean, you understand how much what your role is and what you put in, and it's a far cry from that wasps on a chalkboard sound. It was real. It was in the room with me. It was like, oh my God. Like a lot of songs are made out of studio manipulation. You know, I for one would know. But this was something different. This is something that was immediately at your fingertips. And it was a finger thing. It's all the mods that I have seen that do, it's a picture of a pie. It's not the taste of a pie. It's hard to describe. The feeling in the fingers, it's so loosey-goosey. It's so responsive. It's the difference between a microphone being 5 feet away and being right at your voice. I cannot tell you how much less I had to work over the 2.5 hours we spent doing this thing, getting closer. He started opening up the amp, is all I can tell you. He opened up the ceiling of that amplifier. And I started playing these riffs and he's like, getting closer. How do you like this? And I'm like, well, now again, and this is the other reason I think this happened the way it did, is because I was honest. I was like, can we put more bottom end in? He said, you want to work on something? I said, that's what we're here for, right? He's like, okay. He starts pulling out all these other documents. Shit, I didn't know about, right? Things you don't hear about. And he starts pulling from these. Let me see here. We'll get to this. He starts pulling out shit like this. Like these schematics that are old as hell with coffee stains and all of this. And I'm like, I can show you that because it's legally protected and the lawyer said I own it. But But he pulls this stuff out and he starts working it up. And we start getting closer. And I start playing. I played A Whole Lot of Love. And it sounded more like Whole Lot of Love. And Whole Lot of Love wasn't even cut on a plexi. I was like, it's like, again, Perry, Margalef, a lot of, it was like Zeppelin 1, not Zeppelin 2. Zeppelin 1 was done with a Supro, which Sundragon, Jimmy Page, Perry, and Mitch Colby have all put together this amp company to do Sundragon. And it sounded like a Supro. I was like, and I could change my voice box. I could change my fingers. And what my fingers were doing would change what the amp is. And I mean, my God, I've collected, I've got narrow panel tweeds in the room with me. I've got a Mint dual Showman from 67. I got Ampeg Geminis, B15s, Silvertone Twin 12s in storage. I've gone through all of it, gone through Vox. This could do everything with one guitar, one amp. And I'm like, what the fuck? Then we get to the gun stuff. And I set up my delay pedal. I said, will it do jungle though? And he said, you tell me. And I'm like, that's the fucking sound. That's it. He said, I know. I did those amps. Most people have problems with that. I did not know the extent of the internet controversy that I was entering into with all of that. But he's like, yeah, it was my shit. And there's a reason you can make all of it sound like that. Try Sweet Child of Mine. Or no, I thought that to myself, Sweet Child of Mine. And I recorded this audio when he and I did this, so I can actually back this up with facts as well. But I did Sweet Child of Mine, and hoots and hollers come from this whole rehearsal studio we're at. People stop tuning these snares and banging on, like, oh yeah, getting closer, getting closer. And I'm freaked out. I go to the bathroom. I needed to like not pee myself. And he kept going and tweaking stuff. He's like, that's good timing. There's some things I need to correct in here. I'm going to start setting more of this right. He did not use a cascade at all. He didn't cascade any of my tubes. He got to that sound without an extra tube.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's where I start learning. Organically, I'm gonna give us the Caswell Levi bit, just so it's not stressed on my plate. A lot of people, as I'm sure you know, get into very heated internet debate about whose amp made Appetite. And the way I learned it growing up was Tim Caswell's 39 was at rehearsal and was used in the recording of Appetite. And this other guy copied 39 to make 34 and 36. That other guy was Frank Levi. It wasn't a copy. Caswell was involved, but he made most of that circuit off a Cascade mod. It was a 1959 T. I got the serial number to that, the 39, actually. Wait a second. Okay. And this I will show. I'll flip this around. Okay. Trying to. There we go. Okay, so this is an excerpt from an Excel document. And these are all the manufacturing dates and serial numbers for the S.I.R. backlog.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the thing you got to know about Frank is that he had a fear of being seen, as many performers and people like us do. It's hard because if people see you, they can talk about you and come to whatever conclusion they want. So he sat on this knowledge and information. There's some with Lee Jackson there.
Wow.
He sat on this information. There's more than just 34, 36, and 39. There's a 38. I know the location of that. I'm going to work on it this year. That's a metal panel. 36. Look, 36 is a 77. That's why there seems to be a harshness or a roundness. I'm just speculating. This is speculation, but 36 sounds way different than 39. And a JC made 100, a 2203. Well, no, actually 36 is also 1959. Never mind. I don't have to worry about that. So Caswell, right? He puts a Cascade in 1959 T, a tremolo head. There's an extra tube in there. That is 100% true. Caswell was at S.I.R. He was involved, and Levi was his replacement. And Caswell had ideas of his own, and they're intellectually valuable. They're historically significant. They are not the basis of the rest of them. And Frank, again, did take out the mod in 39 because he didn't feel it was necessary. So a lot of people are up in arms about Caswell versus Levi. You know, the narrative that Caswell took from Levi is not true. Caswell did not take from Levi. Levi did not take from Caswell. They're working on different parts of the circuit.
Right.
By Caswell adding the gain, because it's needed. You don't have distortion and overdrive pedals active all of the time at your disposal. You don't have that ability, so the gain is needed. Caswell was working in the right direction. What Levi was doing was different. In the circuits, and you can see this prior to the S.I.R. amps, you can see it in the Super Kill and the Squier Fire, both. The Squier Fire was Billy Squier's amp from like 77 when he was with Piper. That circuit, without getting into all the details, the plate resistors are a different value. The cathode is hooked up a completely different way. Some wires are rearranged in the preamp. The plate resistors, did I say that plate resistors, cathode? What else we got? The coupling cap values are different. They change throughout the whole damn circuit. Most of them don't. And the last big thing, the way that the signal goes into the tone stack is completely different than any Marshall that is stock. Definitively, those are the secrets. And again, the details I'm keeping intentionally fuzzy because we do have investors that are trying to do more of these amps, and I'll get to that. But yeah, so it's like all these people are on the internet fighting about who was the GNR amp guru. It's a collaboration, and we don't know when Caswell's mod was taken out of the amp. Now, somebody asked me, David Zavados, who's working with Tim Caswell actually, or at least Tim Caswell was a consultant on this tone mod thing. Forgive me, David, I don't remember the name, but it's a device and it plugs into a tube socket and gives you 2 tubes worth. It gets you a Cascade. Even Tim said, had I had this back in the day, I wouldn't have tampered with the amps. That's it. You know, I had to explain to David, because David was like, well, what about this? What about this? I said, it's not a competition. It's never a competition. I'm friends with Mark Cameron, the apprentice under Jose Arredondo, who did Van Halen's amps. And Mark Cameron told me the story of how he found out this amp thing wasn't a competition. He went to NAMM back when my acquaintance was still running the thing. And Mark Cameron shows up and he sees like Reinhold Bogner and Mike Soldano and like a Dumble enthusiast or so, all these amp people that you would think are in competition, but they're all having a beer together and having a great time. They're pursuing a sound and they're going about it their own way. And that is why 39 was ripped down to stock, is because Tim had a vision. And even my clothing tailor says this to me. She says, I'm so happy you bring me original ideas and not close to alter, because I can't do it. I like to start from scratch. It's a math equation. So, yes, Caswell did mod 39. Yes, it was at the rehearsal and the recording of Appetite. So was 36 and I think 37. Because logically, it doesn't make sense to not rent multiple amps from a backline company. I was just in LA doing shit at amp rehearsals studios, and we had multiple rooms. We had multiple amps. We had an orange blow up on us when the guitar player from Vixen and I were playing. They have other amps. That's why there are many other amps. It doesn't. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So getting out of all that, wrapping up the story and creating a dialogue, you can ask whatever you want after this. I get this thing modded and we get to Guns N' Roses. We get to that sound and I have chills. I'm like, oh my God, it's here. It's clearly here. It is the sound. And he sits back and he says, "Do you want to go further?" I said, "Further?" So now I have a choice. He has all these other papers, he has all these other documents, and this other weird amp that's sitting higher up on the shelf that I didn't know about at the time. I'll show you that amp by the end of this interview. This prototype. And he's like, "I have more I can do. We're not done unless you want it to be done. I can stop at the Guns N' Roses stuff." Now, there wasn't any guarantee that any of what he was going to do was going to be what I wanted.
Because you already found it. What a decision to make.
Yes. It reminded me, yes, and thank you for the empathy. It reminded me of the Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail movie at the very end. Number one, I don't know if you have you seen that movie?
Years ago.
Right. So he's in the room. First of all, the Nazis show up and they've got all the other chalices. And it's like the Crusader in his 800-year-old decrepit body is like, "It is now your obligation to choose a chalice. Find the Grail," And the first guy makes the wrong choice. He finds this shiny little cup and it turns his skin and bones to mush. It's like, that's kind of how I felt like. I was like, okay. And Indy shows up and he sees this pile of bones. Is like, what do I do? He chose poorly, So I'm like, and at this moment, I could not tell you how this feels. I know you know this. You've lived long enough, longer than me. You understand. This moment of peace and trust comes over you. It's like, "Indiana," And I just trusted him. I said, "Let's go wherever you want to." And he got giddy like a damn teenager. He said, "Okay, all right." And the ceiling went up 3 stories. The headroom increased. The bass response tightened up. And I could play Sweet Home Alabama on a fucking Les Paul and it sounded like the record. I'm like, what are you talking about? What is this? Later, after he died, a prominent Levi collector named Tiago Castro found me later and he gave me voice messages. We interviewed him there's a book I'm putting together on Frank. And he told me, he said, "Cody, he does these amps. They've helped me be a better person, be a happier person because they do so much more. And they made me feel like I could speak."
Wow.
And so we went further. At that point, he decides, unbeknownst to me, that I am the apprentice. He left color codes in the amp. Like he had color coded what he did, already leaving breadcrumbs. Like he got out a marker to do it. I remember this because I was nervous. He got a mark out and I'm like, I really want to ask him for an autograph. I had like a copy of Use Your Illusion on record in my backpack. And I'm like, do I ask him for an autograph? Does that lower me somehow? What is this? Before I had a chance to, he asked me for a picture with me. He said, "Can we get a picture together?" And I'm like, he respected me as a performer and artist as much as I respected him as a tech. And that's what started it. So take this picture, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm never going to hear from this man again. It was nice. We got it tuned. Every day until he died, we texted, barring a couple stints, physical therapy for him. Every day we were in contact. We grew very close. And it was a half decade of learning from him. And it was so subtle. I didn't realize what was going on. I'm working in here on something. I have an RMI electro piano that goes down and he's like, "Hey bro, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just tuning this 300B. He said, "I remember with Ian Hunter, I had a 300B and Ian Hunter would step on the keys, doing the Mott the Hoople songs, and I'd have to change those damn keys every night. Anyway, here's how you tune it." A Wurlitzer. I was working with one of my techs who is a Vietnam vet, and we were making a DI box for Wurlitzer electric piano. We ran into a problem with Vintage Vibes circuit. We were turning it into a pedal. And he said, "Oh, that's great. Let me call Chris Carroll at Vintage Vibe and get the schematic." And I'm like, come to find out, Chris Carroll worked at Ears with him in 1989. And like all of these people, he called in all these fucking favors. So yeah, long story short, I was the only one who wanted to go further. And so he says to me, and this is where I'm going to turn it over in a second. He says to me, "You think that's something? I got this prototype I'm working on." The first thing he shows me is a prototype, the second high watt rack unit preamp, the pre-one ever made, all done up, breadboarded by him. I'm like, you fucking did high watt too? Didn't know it at the time. That was not something I could encounter on my Googling before I got there. He said, "Yeah, I engineered this. I got them back in it." He said, this is more you need to know about me. This is where I'm going. And he pulls down this thing. Yeah, put you here. Decided to go for this on the phone so I could move around. Okay. He pulls this out. And I'm like, what the hell is that? It was a Marshall at one point. It's not anymore. He said, all that secret sauce I'm putting into a 5 to 15 watt. It'll be the perfect amp. Class A. So it doesn't have the handoff. You may know this, but I'm going to give this for your viewers. You can edit it out or keep it if you want. That's the plexi he did.
Right.
When you get to a certain, this is it. This is the last plexi he modified, and it's the last one I know of any Marshall that he tuned by hand.
Wow. It looks great.
Yeah, we had it custom painted and shit. And it goes on tour with us. I tour as Brian Zircon in the Analog Dream. We bring real equipment, so there's a real 59 Vibrolux. People get to hear that, jazz choruses. So the thing of it is, he shows me this, and he's like, it's perfect. You'll figure it out. You'll find out why. I didn't realize that would end up being, he left me his business. He left me all of his intellectual property. He left me everything that mattered to him when he died. And I didn't know that. And so then this burden of, how the hell are you going to make this work?
Yeah.
So we got to build more of those. And I'm building a factory with some help and investment and such. We're going to make like 25 of them a year. Already contacted in. NAM is good. Got other things going on. The circuits work. They're patented. It's fine. But yeah, so you were the first to officially hear about all of this. So go ahead. Whatever you want to ask, I'm fair game for.
Well, I'm sort of stunned because I can feel the importance and the significance, and I can put myself in those shoes to a degree. Right. And I also feel, I guess, now the responsibility that's you would be feeling to honor that legacy.
Right.
You know, the not only the relationship you had with the man, but the legacy and the name, and I feel all of that weight, and it's quite an amazing story. It's sort of got me a bit like a deer in the headlights.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know, and again, I didn't want this to just be a monologue from my end. I have the closest thing to the facts that I know about all of this, having 4,000 pages of documents, having interviewed members of Aerosmith's crew that knew him. His roommate is a friend of mine from the 80s, and he has set the record straight on a lot of stuff. So we have, ask away and take your time. I am here. Whatever you feel is fresh and relevant.
Well, I don't buy too much into the whole the internet feuds, and I know that that you've touched on the misinformation because it's rife and it's always going to be that way, and there's nothing you can change. But was there tension between Tim and Frank, or was it like the internet's created the tension that never really existed?
Okay, so we can do this one. Okay, here's the thing. Autism has entered the chat. I'm autistic. Frank was autistic. I wager a lot of electronics people are. They're picky, they're hyper-focused, Their social skills are often lacking. And there's this funny little thing with Caswell, Marshall, Lee Jackson, and Frank Levi. Yes, the tension was real. Frank is a human being. The guy was getting out of a divorce. He was sending all of his money back to a woman back east. He's also queer. He was bisexual, as am I. And he repressed that, drank a lot, did a lot of coke. His work went to shit in the late 80s. He fell out of it, got back into high watt, and then figured that shit out again. So he was an abrasive person to be around at the time. He had a soft spot for the people he loved, Sebastian, roommates, all these people, Diego. But none of these techs suffered fools. Lee Jackson had a certain way of doing things. Frank didn't agree with it. Lee Jackson, for example, used a lot of doping epoxy, as did Alexander Dumble. Tech war is going on where Lee would fix up an amp. Sebastian would wake up in the morning, 8 a.m. Frank would pop up, ponytail, sleeping on the floor. There are 3 other beds. He would sleep on the floor to keep his edge. He would pop up. Frank would pop up. What the fuck? What day is it? What day is it? We got to go down to NRG. We got all this. And he didn't drive. He was a New Yorker. Sebastian would drive him, pick him up and drop him off all day. And Sebastian still had to work at other studios, which he or anybody else can tell you about. On Lionel Richie records, Michael Jackson records. And so you just have all these cross-pollinations and problems. Get to the end of the day, they're poor as shit, sharing a plate of beef and broccoli. And Sebastian is like, oh, I can finally go back to the apartment. He's like, and Frank's pager would go off with a code. He's like, I got to find a phone. I'm getting a call. I got a call. He'd end up in the Hollywood Hills tuning fucking Queensryche shit till 2 a.m. And Sebastian's got to get up at 6, and Frank's got to get up at 5 to go work at S.I.R. and fix fucking toilets. It's nuts. This LA stuff goes so deeper, so much more than we could even cover in this interview. It's crazy. So yeah, it was kind of like King of the Hill, paint this, paint that. They all had their idea of how it was supposed to sound. Tim loves a lot of game. And for a lot of sessions, especially like Steel Panther stuff, my God, I love the Tim stuff. I really do. And Tim's vision for how he's seen amps now and the flexibility, how we build that in, very different from how we're doing it. But he had a vision, and you can see that in his switchers and his MIDI control. There are things that Tim is fixing that I have no interest in working with. And there are things that I like better about the way I fix it and the way Frank did it. And Frank and I had disagreements too. That was the other weird thing is like I have circuits and patents for these provisional working out where you don't need to worry about a load on a head anymore. You have a reactive load that can take the brunt of it if it comes unplugged.
Wow.
Power outlets where you don't need a damn computer cord to work at something universal with the voltage switching for our friends across the pond. Tone stacks, you can pull the mid and get less mid, pull the bass, get more bass without the, God love them, certain manufacturers of the 80s that had amps that you didn't really know what was going on, all these EQs. It can be really complicated, but we've managed to do it in a way that keeps that responsiveness of like a tweed, because these are forks in the road. They're not journey after journey after, they don't weigh the circuit down the same way.
Right.
So anyway, it's fun. But yeah, no, there was tension. Mainly the thing that Frank had the biggest problem with wasn't Jim or Terry Marshall. He loved them. In fact, I've got a book signed by Jim Marshall that Frank owned. And it's crazy, right? Because you open this thing, it's a history of Marshall put together by this obsessive in the late 90s or early 90s. And it's annotated. Frank's like, no, this model is this model and this model is this model. And Jim saw it. So it's like we're sitting on the definitive history of Marshall from all of these people. Like there's so much.
Wow.
But he really didn't like the AFD amp. I'm going to tell you that right now. He was fucking depressed when the AFD came out because they didn't ask him. They got into 34, figured out, some of the circuit, backtracked. Bear in mind that's still only a good 40% of what he can do, what we can do now. And that prototype sounds better than the Plexi, by the way. but can't play that one today for other reasons. Investors will be pissed at me if I do. I'm giving you as much as I can. But so anyway, no, the AFD really drove him nuts because here is this. And I'll tell you about with Frank. His parents grew up in the Depression. They were practical, so he grew up Staten Island, New York, tiny, very frail queer kid, really. And he had to like rough up and toughen up and shit, and built this persona that was he was very principled. He's very kind. A lot of New Yorkers, they're kind, but they're not nice.
Right.
I learned that. Vinny Appice, I played with him earlier this year, and I remember the same thing. Is like, do I play Holy Diver or do I want to? And he was so abrasive. And I literally asked Vinny, I'm like, are you pissed at me? And he's like, no, why would I be? Gets up, changes the thermostat, makes sure my guitar's in tune. Kind, but not nice. Frank's parents didn't think what he wanted to do was real. He wanted to play piano. He was a keyboard player. He loved that shit. He loved the Mellotron. That was his first big obsession, was the Moody Blues. He said he always wanted to be in the Moody Blues. And go ahead.
So you've touched on how he was unhappy with the Marshall AFD model. Now,
yes.
For the Silver Jubilee, which came out in the late 80s, was said to have been Marshall's version of, well, everyone's doing these mods and we're going to do our version.
Most people don't know that. That's very good, Francis. Yes.
So did he have an opinion on that?
Marshall read the writing on the wall. I'm gonna speak positively firstly of Marshall because I don't know where it came from, but they understood the gain was necessary.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that renders Caswell's contribution rather obsolete because by the time we go from Plexi to JCM 800, the gain's built in the circuit. Now, even the prototype has a cascade, so I don't judge that. And a lot of people were coming up with that. And Tim, again, I would rather Tim be well known for his later contributions because this shit now is fire. It's awesome. But yes, so the Silver Jubilee, the JCM 800, Marshall was doing the best they could to keep up with the 80s rock and roll. And that's also, by the way, why Frank did those amps. Because Glenn Buckley, who hired him, was pissed that 39 was getting rented all the time because Caswell's shit was so good. But that leaves all these other amps, and it's not good for business. So he goes in and he starts fucking tuning and doing all this stuff. And he, again, different mods in the 800, different mods and all of this. But as far as Marshall goes, I don't think he had a negative view of the Silver Jubilee or clearly of the 800 or the 223s, the 224s, because he understood it was all about the player. It wasn't an ego thing for him. That's also why he never found it necessary to clarify until it was so tangled up that he left me with this bullshit. But the AFD pissed him off in the early 2000s because they were billing it as the Appetite amp, literally Appetite for Destruction. And so his desire to, and again, techs, you really, techs are techs. They are purpose driven. They don't feel the need to shout from the rooftops. My mother's a nurse. She got nominated for this Nurse of the Year thing, and she was so stuck writing up her accolades. I'm looking at this on paper, like Frank's client list. I'm looking at this shit on paper, my mother's thing. And she's like, yeah, this is what I've done. I'm like, why are you nervous? She's like, well, I just don't feel right putting it all out there. I'm like, it's gotten big enough. People care. They want to know.
Yeah.
Why don't you want to be seen? The reality was he had hidden all of that. And then, of course, Caswell wisely spoke up and said, I did work at S.I.R. I did work on 39. Slash took 34, and their team did take the circuit from 34 without talking to Frank. They didn't know where he was, they said. And to be honest with you, that's not an indictment of Slash. Slash, historically, and I think he would agree with this, has had a very bad time with handlers and people around him. Tiago, my friend, used to run Guitar Center's Hollywood section, the Hollywood Vintage. And Slash would come in. Personable, lovely guy, amazing guy. And he would ask for like a fucking Inverness grain Firebird, and Tiago would be like, I got it, I'm getting on it. And he'd find the guitar, and Slash would come in months later, and Tiago's not able to get in touch with him. So the whole framework of these people, I don't blame Slash for this, but the powers that be didn't do their homework because Frank was still alive.
Yeah.
So they copy his circuit. Everybody thinks it's Tim's. It's a sticking point for me because Tim's stuff didn't sound like what I wanted anyway. That's why I didn't go to Tim. I went to Frank. And I don't need to prove much beyond that. I mean, again, so like I said, here's the people, and I know this is blurry. This is what you'll see what I'm getting at in a second. These are the people that Frank worked with or for to do this kind of stuff for.
Wow.
Okay. And some of these names, pick a letter, Francis, whatever letter you want.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have.
Yeah.
It would have everyone on there that was well known
Seriously.
for tone.
Yeah, pick a letter from A to Z. I want to make this more participative. Give me something.
Let's go D.
Okay. Doug Aldrich, for starters. I know you just had him on.
Yeah,
he's
great,
really cool.
Great guy, great player.
Mm-hmm. Dave Marshall, Def Leppard. Frank was on the Pyromania tour. Dokken, Doug Aldrich, drums. That's enough. That's fine. You know what I'm saying? But names you got Gary Moore here. You've got Little River
He's
Band.
done
Now, some
work
of this
with Gary Moore as well.
Lita Ford, Mark Hitt. Worked on Mike Pender's Mellotron. He got to do the Moody thing. NRG Recording, Motorhead, Moody Blues, Mountain, Robin Trower, Tony Levin. Now, bear in mind, some of this is tech work that is not just amps, because again, it's not, my goodness, I haven't unfolded this thing in years. Okay. It's not just amplifiers that this guy would do. I mean, he has, so I've got here, this out here. I removed them from their sleeves so we can sketch through them. Make sure all this is correct. Monitoring system, yes. Okay. Here I have rig building documents that were used in the creation of Rat's iconic albums and rig. So I've got King's set up, and I have Torches. And these circuits, and I can show some of this. You can flip it around, and I'll give you good solid looks of this stuff. These circuits here, they're full systems. Okay, these are not just amp mods. It's not just about the amp. You know this. It's the guitar, it's the pedals, it's effects controller units.
Every nuance that makes a detail.
Yes, sir. You should be very vindicated in your holistic approach, because that is, as far as I know, the best way to do it.
Wow.
So, and, custom audio electronics got involved. There were screen printers. It takes a village, yes. But these were his circuits. And again, some of this is convention. You take the like peer-reviewed research. You take the closest thing you can manage to what you know is the truth, and you build on it.
Yep.
So it's inherently collaborative. But the things that he was most well known for are in getting people their sound. And so my life has kind of taken a similar path. I basically took a hiatus from this Frank thing for like 2 years to build a live show and ATA cases and backline and all this stuff. And I get it. I understand. One other thing I need to mention, then I'll turn it back over. That stuff started back, as you saw on the website, it started at NASA. He worked at Technical Material Corporation on the radio systems for ground control. They were told it was a Mercury contract. He's already been doing systems since the 60s, so this was nothing. But that's what I want to preach the joy of, is that it is everybody has a role in this. It's all about the sound. It's the amp, it's the guitar, it's the pedals, it's everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's more achievable now than ever. Go ahead.
So is there's the mystique around number 39 being stolen or lost.
Right.
So what is the view on that? So it got hired, it never came back. Is that the basic story that we're told?
Well, yeah, and again, giving Slash the benefit of the doubt here, the people around him and much of these famous people, uh, it was miscommunication. As I recall from Slash's biography, I believe, he didn't want it. He wanted to keep it. He wanted to steal the fucker, and I don't blame him. I get it. That's fine. Frank saw it differently. Frank was first of all, you're trying to keep an amp by a company that is employing me. I like that you like it, but he still has 34. I mean, he wanted some of the Levi stuff, and it's only been for the vindication of Mike Klink and other people, and even Slash. I don't know what he knew. I mean, Frank and he knew each other. He did work for Slash separately, but whether we want to blame the label, and again, the roadie was supposed to take the amp back to S.I.R. That was his literal fucking job. So he did. And Slash was upset because where did this amp go? Now, we do know the trajectory for 39 was, so it worked. It went out with Dokken, with Lynch. It was on tour. People have pictures of that.
Okay.
I don't remember where they are. I'm not the Dokken guy. But there's viable evidence to suggest that Lynch took 39 around the country. Again, S.I.R. was a backline company. It was not just for recording. And he liked it. Now, David Geffen signs through, the requisite channels in Geffen Records, signs GNR. S.I.R. would also have rehearsal studios. I have some stuff here from S.I.R., which people seem to lose their shit. So we have, this is the S.I.R. file. Let me turn this around. And that's in Frank's handwriting. This is the replacement folder. And some of these I've unsleeved for our deal so you don't have the glare. But these are actual documents from S.I.R. in the 1980s, of which I do not know of any equivalent on the open market or any of that. He, it's office banter. It's craziness. It's any number of things, stuff that he had hanging up in his little nook and corner. Now, I'm going to tell you, he was pissed off. He was pissed off at S.I.R. because they were not appreciating him.
Right.
So he would make up these disaster collages, we would call them, with his boss's faces on it. And yeah, that's kind of malevolent. He was an introvert. He didn't report. He didn't know how to state his needs. So some of that was on him. But this is real. This is like the shit, man.
Wow.
We have, I'm going to skip forward and find something of relevance here. Here's an affidavit. Attention all S.I.R. employees. The following is the list of security measures that must be adhered to at all times and who's responsible for each measure. This is what they held that roadie to. By contract, S.I.R. was working with Geffen Records. That roadie had a lot of pressure to do his damn job. So he didn't care that Slash wanted to keep the thing. He wanted to take it back to keep its job safe. And here's the document from October, S.I.R. repair department. Tools removed from my shop. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, man. So anyway, to answer the question, yeah, there was that's how 39 occurred, to the best of our knowledge, and where it is slatted into the importance. It's an amp. He would tell you the same fucking thing. It's an amp. I don't care all this flowery bullshit I just told you about that prototype. It's great. It's an amp. It records well. It makes me feel great as a player. That's really the simplicity of that. And it's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo to get there. But I will say also, the secret of the amp, the big thing. I'll give you the tale of the Mark VII. When he died, I had Fish's guitar tech reach out to me. I had Tiago from Guitar Center Hollywood reach out. I had, again, people from like Aerosmith and stuff. My name was popping up in Jimmy Crespo's voicemail box. It's the apprentice. I had his best friend of 38 years ask me when the funeral was. And I'm like, why are they asking me? His family, God love them, didn't understand him. I had several people ask me, what's going on with the Mark VII? He said, that was the secret. That was the amp that was going to be made. I did not know this. And you're the apprentice. Hey, it's the apprentice. You're the apprentice, right? You're the apprentice. But to be honest with you, and I will tell you this and for the podcast, people's tried to shake me down for shit. And there's one other thing I can go on the records for. Billy Blades is a damn liar because he was coming out and capitalizing on it and saying, oh, I have the prototype. Frank entrusted me to pass the torch along. And I'm reading this on Facebook and my blood is boiling. So then I start getting it. I start getting a fraction of his anger for this deal. But again, he created it himself because he didn't report. He didn't share. And so, that's what we're doing. We're working on it.
Yeah.
But
and do you have any suspicions as to where it is now?
Well, on the vaguest level possible, I know where some of the S.I.R amps are. I cannot disclose their location, but I can tell you 39 hasn't been found. Some of the other ones have. And it's a trip because, again, just like Levi did to Caswell's, other modders got to them and they ripped everything out. One of them, again, is coming to my shop in the next year once we get the logistics right for me to re-Frankify it because it's got fucking Fender Mallory's or Orange Drops and some other text interpretation of what it should have been. So Frank wasn't the only one. I mean, there are other people doing that, But yeah, they're out there. And I am, shameless plug here, less about business and more about my own drive. I was interested in getting people access to these.
Yeah.
And so, again, I look up to Perry Margolef. I will say that. He is a secret operator. That man is responsible for so many acts of justice in the music industry that his friendship with me is very inspiring to me, and I'm very grateful to know him. Perry's the guy that got Link Ray in the Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's the one with Dirk Ziff behind that guitar donation. He, in the car world, he's saved original Myers Minxes, like the first ones out there, and he's a big resource for Bentley. We find amps and guitars we love, and we want to keep them alive. That's what I did. I sacrificed part of my career as an artist. Because again, I'm just going to be honest with you. I have a completely different set of things going on. I don't need to play second fiddle to whatever else tech shit, my work as an artist has already netted me the kind of notoriety that most people would dream about. Like there's the nerdy ass, I say nerdy ass, Dungeons and Dragons is pretty cool. Well, that's fine. So people already draw me as a character. I'm already doing the rock star thing. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I loved this sound so much, and I loved these amps, and I had the same questions you did about 39 and 36 and the rest of it. And at a certain point, I have this question posted on my bedroom wall. What is the one thing such that I can do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Today it was having this conversation and continuing this conversation with you. In the whole scope of the Levi equation, it's making more of these amps with the forks in the road that he and I traveled that first day in New York.
Yeah.
Giving people the options to tune it to themselves. And I'm going to tell you, it has been weird. There's another amp builder who shall remain nameless that is very prominent in the Marshall replica world that proudly stated in an interview, I don't even know how long it takes to Tolex our cabinets. I didn't like that. I also don't like the idea of making the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like cover bands. I love playing covers. I love people who play covers. I will play snippets. Before we get off here, I will play snippets of the old GNR and whatever else you want to hear. As our last little section, as we get to I'm probably at my third quarter, honestly, for this. But so I don't like the idea of making the same style amp cabinet, same this, same that, you know. So we have been in the process of building a literal factory, and I have some of these tools here. So this is a casting flask that can cast metal logos and even faceplate parts if I want to. And it just looks like a fucking box. But this is the reality of my life. This is what I've been having to do with people that I've designed these things, and I work alongside the techs to build them. I didn't like how that other amp manufacturer didn't know about his own product. And if I was going to put something out there, I wanted it to be like the Rolls Royce or Lamborghini of amps. Small batch, but just everything done incredibly
with
well.
soul. It's got to come with soul, because there's a million other things out there that can just flood the market, but why go down that road?
Exactly.
Something's got to come with soul. It's got to be personalized. It's got to have warmth.
Soul, baby. Custom
Wow.
shit. Yeah.
That is stunning, that finish.
Thank you. You know,
Wow, that is absolutely stunning.
Yeah. You know, so stuff like that. And, you know, it's like getting to work with DeMartini on these. That was fun. Custom etching. You know, I wanted as a restoring engineer, like somebody who restores this equipment, we love Fender, don't get me wrong. But like everything I hate about old amps, like Tolex, cardboard covers for a spring reverb deal, silk screening that if you have a scratch, you sand it off, it's gone. I wanted somebody, if they were going to find a ZLI, I wanted them to not be afraid of fixing it. I wanted all of it to be there. That's Japan. That's like Model T hard asphalt that has been cured in at 700 degrees into a piece of aluminum. It's in the finish. It's in the metal. I could buff a scratch off of that and not lose that information. That's how the faceplates are. I wanted stuff like that, like these metal knobs. This is, of course, set up for coil splitting, but it's done here. There's no push-pulls on plastic knobs with a split shaft brass. Those are solid shaft pots. Those are metal knobs. And to get to the single coil thing, I've also done some impedance work to where it really sounds like a Strat. You don't have that worst of both worlds in the middle thing. You know, everybody's trying to combine Fenders and Gibsons. So So circling back to that, it's that's where my head has been, and so I'm the test kitty. I'm the guinea pig, because this stuff has to work. Yeah, it has to function if I'm going on tour with this stuff. So that is, you know, there's a Japanese teapot maker. There's a video of this. It's Business Insider has a series on YouTube about it, talking about why is it expensive, why something is expensive. And they focus on different crafts people. And I'll never forget what this teapot maker and designer said. It takes him 3 years to design a teapot. And they're stippled and they're iron. They're cast iron in sand. And he said, and yeah, I mean, the market's overrun with copies and stuff, and it drives him nuts too, you know, who wouldn't? But he said, there's a certain point where the more people you get involved in manufacturing something, the responsibility is shared, or is no longer, pardon me, I'll give you the soundbite. The more, restart. What did he say? Again, I want to be factual here. The more people you have involved in the manufacturing process, the less each person feels responsible for an item of quality.
It dilutes.
It dilutes. It dilutes the responsibility. And he said it much more eloquently than I did. And you did as well. The diluting, that's perfect. Yes. And one of the things that attracts me is like in the Fender custom shop, a master build or a mono build, when you have one person trained in, like, I etched this myself and I did have help cutting it, but I wired this harness. I did this paint job with another individual. Like 2 people worked on this. This started out as a Gibson body and neck that was divoted into with a mouse sander. You could literally stick your thumbnail under the pickup ring and claw out meat. It was nuts. It was a reverse arch, carved top. It was horrible. And yeah, and it has just been, the coolest thing to take around and to play on different records and sessions. And if you want to show up with one amp and one guitar, I wanted to make the guitar. I've got other designs. They're not Les Paul or Strat shaped, but the Barrera and the Facet. Ugh, I have CAD drawings to make. It's tough, man. That's all I'm saying. It's like there's so much that goes into manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I had to buy a guitar factory. You can't go to the store and buy a fucking guitar factory, but I had to do that. I found a guy he was involved in a lot of the Stuart McDonald jigs and things, and he was getting up there in age, and he's like, look, I really don't want this to get split across the 4 winds to my kids. They don't know what this is. So we took that on. We took on the Levi thing, and I just, yeah.
Wow.
That's where it's going. So
that's so much. I mean, those guys, and Frank included, are lucky that you've found each other. Really, it's such a nice thing when people can find each other, that understand each other, and it becomes a pure work of passion and an honoring of a legacy. There's something special about that, and it obviously it appeals to people who recognize that too.
Yeah, and the story of that, I'm supposed to say these other 2 things. There is a book being made about Frank's life, and there is, what else? There's a show, a project in the works that Sebastian St. George is involved with. That was the roommate, and he's worked with Kelsey Grammer. He's been active. He worked for Spielberg.
Wow.
And he has a project, and members of Quiet Riot are involved. I'm a consulting producer and a musical director on it. And we're working on that to tell these stories because they're so relatable. It's the same stuff. And storytelling, I think, is so important because it's the reassurance that we encounter when we face those obstacles. When somebody sees a story and they go, how did you manage that as a 17-year-old? And what are you doing with a recording studio, label, a show in your own music, and this tech stuff? You're going to implode. How do you do that? And I tell people, I would work twice as hard if I did one less thing. If I did one less than what I'm doing. If I just worked on my music, I wouldn't have a facility and the best light to present that or to record on my own. And my art would forever be in the hands of somebody else and somebody else's vision. If I just did studio work, I would never know what it was like to have had somebody come up to me and say, your song saved my life. Can I get an autograph? I had 4 hours of sleep over 2 days the first time somebody asked for my autograph. And the whole adage, work so hard that your signature becomes an autograph. And the gift of that to somebody. I wouldn't have known that, and I wouldn't have felt that therapy of like the kind of love you can give to a listener is the same thing you received, paying it forward. And that also has netted me the ability to right other wrongs to me in my life. Case in point, Robbie Krieger, and the Doors. The Doors have been such a big influence on me. And, I got to spend time with Robbie Krieger this year and play with him at the Whiskey. I reached out. They do these rock and roll fantasy camps. David Fishoff, who got the Monkees. He's these super connectors people. I don't know. These super connector people are crazy. He got the Monkees back together. He got Ringo to go on tour, started the All-Star Band. And he gets, business people that, in the finances and all this other stuff that have a lot of money that want to spend time with rock stars. And then there are the musical counselors and then the players. Now, I'm not big enough to be a musical counselor, but I'm not a normal camper. I reached out and I said, hey, I see Robbie's doing one of these things. We have some unfinished business. I have Ray Manzarek's original Hammond organ, the one that the Doors bought for him on his birthday, Ray's birthday, 1970. Do you want to use it? I could fly it out. We could freight it. We could do something. You could have fun. I don't care. They said, look, we don't need the organ unless you really want to make it happen. We really need keyboard players. We like you. Can you help? And I'm like, and so they're very accommodating. They and I kind of did the whole badge thing and went undercover or whatever as these campers. We did the Whiskey and we did the Viper Room and we got this Hammond back and Robbie sees this thing and goes, oh my God. He starts crying. I start crying. There's a podcast about that. Somebody's interviewed, whatever. It's a whole separate thing. But to illustrate your point, it's the connection. It's the storytelling. This is all universal. We are all connected,
Yeah.
And it's just music. And to have that impact, I gave Robbie and John part of the keys from that Hammond organ. And to see Robbie wake up and light up, and on the stage the Doors were signed at in 1966 in front of these people, and he, to have him kneel down to see this and to have this conversation. And, I broke out into tears first, and he's comforting me. And I'm like, I've got something for you. I can't bring your SG back, but here are keys from this organ. We did a Q&A, David and I, before we did this event. We did it at the Whiskey, and we talked a little bit about Frank and ZLI stuff. And again, what I'm very happy about with you and with David, I thank you greatly for having an interest in me as an artist and as a musician, and not just the work of the past, because we are so much more than that. And your podcast, I believe, and I had seen parts of your podcast before. I was very happy to hear from you. I think the fact that you are as interested in the future as you are the past is what is giving us that future. It's people like yourself that make that happen. David and I did this Q&A, and Robbie's book, he talks about two instruments. In the whole biography, Robbie talks about two instruments. His SG that did Light My Fire, and the Hammond they bought for Ray when they did the big time stuff, when they got to do an LA Woman and all that. And he said, I don't know where either of them are. I'm probably going to die before any of them come up. And I'm like, okay, we got to do this. So to me, it's about karma. It's about the truth. It's about love and energy. It's that, okay, well, this person, this band meant so much to me, and I want to give back to them in a meaningful way. That's why I do what I do. And my original work, the songs, I do that because every listener to me is me at a more vulnerable stage in life.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. And so I love doing it. I'm thankful that there are people like yourself and myself and Robbie Krieger and David Fishoff and Sebastian St. George and Frank Levi and Tim Caswell. It's a party, man. It's great. And shout out to the Viper Room and Tommy Black. Y'all are family. I love those people. But yeah.
Yeah,
so,
no, it is special, I think. And you remind me very much of the saying, I'm sure you've heard it, when the time is right, the teacher will appear. and when the time is right, the teacher will disappear.
Yes, that is true. That is fair. I almost inherited a guitar shop before the Frank thing. And I remember going, why? Why couldn't this happen? It would have been so cool. There are plans. There are other places you are needed. And I think when the detail oriented among us, I think our biggest difficulty can be the relationship to change.
Yeah.
Because we like something. We love this, we do this, we whatever. I'm very happy that the people I've made connections with, we all stay in touch. Ephemerally, it takes time, you know. I will likely be in touch and keep watching the podcast and, you know, email, whatever, I don't care. We make these connections with these people, and it's very hard to grow, evolve, and let go. But the reality is, it's just this, man. It just happens. And there's the space. We have to leave the space for people to grow and develop. It's very uncomfortable for me to have a full crew moving my cases.
Yeah, I can
It's
imagine.
not my job. And the stage manager was like, look, you need to let these people do their job. There's nothing wrong with you saving your energy to go on. That's where we need you. But yeah, and then you have to leave them to do it because that's how they learn. And Frank's passing and death is how I learned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Look,
whatever questions you have, we can do whatever questions, and to
well,
end it, whenever we're doing that, we can
yeah,
do a
no.
little
Well,
comic.
before we jump into a few sounds, which I'm dying to hear, the the your take. So the internet's full of people having a go at the mods. You know, people got YouTube videos saying, "Oh, this is the simple way to mod your 800 to do the number 34 mod." Your Have you found one that you've gone, yeah, that is right? Or are they all a version of?
You'll love this one. You'll love this. Okay. Technically, they got 34 right.
Okay.
The implementation of an earlier Levi circuit into an 800 minus a bunch of stuff, they got 34 right. But, and this is why Frank took the time to tune my amp. Every amp made the way that Marshall, Fender, everybody made the old way. Every amp's different. You can't take, that'd be like me trying on your clothes or taking your prescriptions. It's to a modder, it's as heinous and unfulfilling and potentially dangerous. Your plate resistors, well, let's use that as an example. We can talk about that. So I'll give you some tech shit. No, cathode bias, even cathode bias. Let's look at a cathode bias. Okay. There's a resistor in there. And most of these old amps are made with 10 to 20% intolerance.
Yep.
There's a math equation. It's very simple. Your cathode bias, your resistor, it's like, say, let's do a 180 ohm resistor, class A amp, small like a Vox. In that AC30 or AC15, for that value, it's more likely an AC15. For that AC15, it's actually fucking cooked. That 170, 180, it's like 212. If you actually measure it, because it's old, it's cooked, whatever. But hey, it sounds great. Better than this one, because that one is still 170. And then there's other things that are cooked and fucked up. They come out of the factory this way. You can't drop in any mod and expect it to function the same way. 34 was the right choice for 34. Well, Brian, how the fuck are you going to make amps that clearly replicate this experience? Why are you going through all this trouble for this value proposition where you can have that sound every time? Well, the tolerance has to go down. We're using 1 to 5% components. And that's not a trade secret. Most people just don't do it because it's fucking expensive.
Right.
But I would rather be responsible for that guarantee and sell less amps, less amplifiers. And it's only one of 9 things that make them cool, so I don't care about saying that. But that's the thing. If you can picture it this way, if all of those components are choices in the road of where that sound's going to go, and you've got, I don't know, 500 to 900 components in a lot of these amps.
That adds up.
It fucking adds up. You're going to end up over here. You took a left turn at Albuquerque.
Yeah, that adds up
Yeah,
significantly.
right. And so that's the joy. And I've no disparaging of vintage amp hunters. I personally, I've lucked out with a really nice Fiberlux and a 48 or 49 Deluxe over there, and a 59 Princeton or 60 Princeton. It's great. You find the one that sounds great and you feel like you won something. I have a Bassman 6G6B here that belonged to Johnny Bradley from Gary Clark Jr.'s band. This was the bass amp that did like the soundtrack of Chef and stuff. It's his favorite bass amp. He's on record for saying that.
Wow.
And I spent in Austin, as the more collector side, South Austin Music, great place, great group of people. I spent probably 2 days. I spent 45 minutes, 2 separate days with a 69 Les Paul. That's like one of mine I use. And 2 different Bassmans, this one and another one. The other one was more minty in stock, wasn't recovered like Gary. This was recovered to match Gary's combo, because the combos of Fenders are brown and the heads, the piggybacks were white, blonde. But anyway, I'm like playing these back and forth and listening for those nitnoids. That's all fun. That's great. That's cool. But these things are getting more and more expensive every year. And younger players, I just saw Guitar Center did a deal. They said, of every 10 customers that they have that start playing guitar, only one is a year-long return. Only one is coming back and buying more gear. They gave up.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they gave up. If it's a discipline thing, if it's an access thing, if it's a passion interest thing, if it's just playing on the internet, that's fine. I don't want this chase that you and I have very much celebrated throughout our life. Now that these things are becoming prohibitively expensive, people only have so many moves in the market before they have to get out or they're done.
Yeah.
I was one move away before making that connection with Frank. I was just going to, I did. I already gave up. So we do have levels of these models, and I've had to, by insourcing the manufacturing and mono builds. Like, my dream wasn't to own the Ferrari. My dream was own the fucking Ferrari factory. I want to know how the sausage is made. I want to see some handmade rustic shit. We do have cheaper models that are more accessible, and I thought about making like a charity thing where the more expensive models, a section of that goes into making the cheaper ones available. We do have to cover costs, but strip down muscle car versions where people can get access to that sound. No, so to answer the question, yeah, it's out there, but it's the process. The values he chose are not the values in these circuits. They were an adaptation to 34, and that only is guaranteed to produce that tone in 34.
Interesting. So. Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. So then your one, the range that you're working on at the moment.
Yes.
How long until that is available as a general public item?
Well, copycats, you have 5 years. There are people doing versions of the Levi stuff, and people are like, why do you let that happen? And I'm like, because they're serving a need. Right now, I'm not at the place where I can do that. Fortunately, everything else is succeeding and going very well. And I'm chomping at the bit to do that, but it will probably be a half decade. That's the answer.
Yep.
I know that it is more than likely those will be done and out in less than half a decade. But I'm not going to tell you 2 years and have people waiting,
Yeah, which is fair enough.
I already have 3 clients waiting on shit.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to do it right. So we've been learning to do I've somehow fell into doing designer or fashion. What the fuck? And that's taught me a lot about the assembly line process. So we have like leather bags. Again, like we just made a leather bag for the general manager of the Viper Room. He loves the damn thing. And I love him very much. Tommy is amazing. But I did a red carpet showing in Beverly Hills, a red carpet appearance, and I'm wearing ZLI leather work. And people are like, can I get those bags? And it's taught me about getting your suppliers right and divvying up tasks. And the touring, the live show stuff has helped me with that too, is how do you divvy up this work? And so I have a small group of people that are very interested in music and the industry and all this. And we're just navigating that together. And we're just doing it until it's sustainable. We're not going to commit to that, because it is happening. It's out there. But, like that casting frame, just that box. Okay, it's just 2 boxes of oak. Looks like picture frames. How hard can it be? Well, guess what? That center seam has to be lapped flat to 4 decimal points on granite, or it'll leave a gap and the metal will come out the side and explode. Oh. Well, then suddenly I've melted a teenager's face off. So it just reminds me of all those old Fender videos where they're spraying the lacquer without masks and stuff. And so finished is better than perfect. But like you said, it's your quote about the master appearing and disappearing and lessons and such, that it's happening, and this has, especially this podcast, this has soothed part of my nervous system to the degree that I'm still doing what I need to for the Frank legacy.
You got I suppose this might be a bit of a personal question and you don't have to answer it, but do you have someone in your circle that you trust to do what you're doing after you've finished doing it? With all the documents you have, all of these items, right. I mean, I know that it can be overwhelming to have this sense of, and it's not the monetary value, but the sense of importance, and you withhold something and you're looking after it. Is there in your mind, well, worst case, whatever, anything at some point, 10, 20, 50 years time, this will be okay because I have entrusted X person next to me. Is that in your mind, or have you got that sorted out?
Well, if I show up dead on a beach in the next 2 years, I didn't kill myself. Let this be the record. I know too much. Well, yeah. I don't mind getting personal with that. And that's kind of the whole deal, right? This came to me like the leather work did to practice assembly lines. This was my first taste of being notable or notoriety based shit. And it, you work with how much do you give outside of yourself? Do you have a circle of support? How do you do that? So the answer is, yeah, I have 2 or 3 people that I'm pretty sure would carry that out of necessity. Right. We didn't want to make the mistake that Bill Beer did. Little background, because you're a music nerd, I'm going to give this to you. Bill Beer made the perfect Hammond organ. So Hammonds, if you'll indulge me, is this cool?
Yeah, go for it.
This is out of topic. Okay. So, also, I feel like let me get this out of my field of view so I can go through this unrelated, but yeah, I'm not just some business weasel. I'm a designer as well. So this is like, I mean, that's about what you can expect. It's different. It's completely different.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's different devices for different things, of course, but Bill Beer did this the wrong way. Bill Beer had okay, Hammond organ. You're familiar, of course. Hammond organs, right?
Yep.
This is an A100, 1961. It's beautiful. But could you imagine lugging that fucker around? It's too big. Way too heavy. Bill Beer, another legacy I've been left to entrust. I've got 3 of these fuckers. It's Bill Beer, it's Archie Collins, the guitar maker with all the patents, and Levi, which is great because I love keyboards. Like the best Hammond sound to me is the Bill Beer stuff of like the Doors, and Bill Beer did shit for Little River Band. No, sorry, Little Feat. Jefferson Airplane had several. Fleetwood Mac had 2. In fact, 2 of his beer chops, the cut downs, he hates it or hated it when you call them chops. The cut downs went up for auction. Fleetwood Mac's stuff for like $30,000, $40,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and Bill Beer was a problem solver. Bill Beer had he recognized that tube electronics were pretty dodgy to take around and boom, 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 boom on tour. The weight was unmanageable. And so he made these cut downs and he did crazy shit to these and made these really sharp sounding, nice, responsive preamps, put them in these Ammons, and he'd spend probably 130 or 150 hours on each organ, cutting them down to these supercharged, indestructible touring organs. There's like 30 in the world. In the state, there is 3 I know of. Dick Sims's, which played on Eric Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff, is in the capital of my state, behind glass. And the other 2 are in front of me right now. So this is the Marshall Tucker Band's Hammond. And this gives you an idea. Compared to that A100, it's a different beast entirely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, there's tone stacks, there's volume, there's all sorts of crazy stuff on that thing. But Bill Beer messed up. He had a problem because this preamp here, which he, of course, over years or whatever of his development, he made a preamp about this big. He gooped him. Gooped him. And so nobody likes working on Bill Beer Hammonds, but the portable case, the form factor, all the dimensions are right. And so I'm not going to sit on all of these things to the point where the good advancements die. I've given these dimensions out to people who have successfully built replicas of Bill Beer Hammonds. And here's the other one. This is, and we have, the crew has left this for me here because it's emotional. This is the Hammond that the Doors had, so we don't have it in a case. We have it to where I can pull it out and record with it anytime we want.
Oh, wow.
But this was bought by Jim Morrison and the Doors for
Jeez.
Ray Manzarek. It was on L.A. Woman, Full Circle, Other Voices, 3 of Ray's solo albums, the Night City record with Blondie. It is just incredible. And Robbie signed it for me. If I don't rotate and lose you. And he even drew the little things on there after we wiped our fucking tears off. But so now the cool thing about this is this Bill Beer Hammond has a big preamp with all the components visible. I mean, there's some canisters I have to literally have to call a chiropractor to x-ray some of this shit to figure it out. But that was the ideal for me for the tone of organs. I'll put the blanket on it later. So I'm in heaven, man, because the most iconic organ that I could possibly own is with me, and we got it back to the guy, and it's all love and happiness. And there's one of one, and I have to save that damn circuit. And there's one of these, and I have to save that, and that's why. I'm at an unlisted location. I can't show you where I'm outside.
Yeah.
But
yeah. That's fair enough.
So, yeah.
It's a huge responsibility and a huge privilege.
Of course. So, yeah, let's get some sound bites.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to cap this recording here. I don't know if you need... I didn't actually mic that. So let me just start the recording over so you don't have to scrub for a timestamp. Okay. Now we have this, again, I'm going to rely on this lovely little ribbon mic. For anybody tech purist wise, we are looking at a rebuilt Electro Voice V1, about 18 to 20 annoying American inches. I'm trying to do this as clinically as possible, but also as informally and conversationally as possible. You understand? I'm kind of juggling something here.
No,
so
it's perfect.
Okay, so I've got a 78 Les Paul there, Cherry Burst tuned down, and do little samples of GNR, Rat, and all that stuff. I just want the plexi to be heard. You can hear that. And I'll end with the other guitar, the blue one. So you can hear a bit of the flexibility, and we can even do a little song challenge where you can throw out songs that totally shouldn't be playable on an 80s rock machine, and we'll see how they do. Now, I have one pedal on, and it is an Echoplex preamp. There's a little bit of gain on the front end. It's an EP+. I'm going to turn that off first so you can hear what just the raw amp sounds like, but I'm going to show you why that's part of it. So I'm just going to go through it in a truncated, abbreviated manner. We're going to put this Echoplex back on, Echoplex with a little bit of boost. That's it. No other pedals. Okay, the first one we're looking at is, if we're in tune, we're going to talk about Rat, Round and Round. It's right there. Let's talk about My Michelle, which I believe was 36 off of the AFD, Appetite for Destruction. You get this really nice, tight clean. Then we can roll right up into it. Sweet Child of Mine. Right there. Couple more and then I'll move on to the last thing. Welcome to the Jungle, chorus. Bit of a delay pedal for that, but otherwise the same. It's a Tuesday. Like this, it feels new every time I do it, but it's just what it is. And, you know, it's crazy. Do you have any Levi songs? I should have done Def Leppard or any of these, you know, but I'm just giving you something. Do you have any songs that you're aware of from his legacy that you'd like me to get you snippets of?
Oh, geez. Well, how about something that's somewhat in the ballpark? Gary Moore, Still Got the Blues.
Okay. I really should have called one of my engineers. He does that note for note, and I haven't spent time learning it, but I will do some Gary Moore-esque play with the dynamics, and that's really where that expansion happens. I'm actually going to move over to the new guitar for this.
Okay. Believe
it or not, that's actually the first artist that myself and one of the fabricators who works with us at ZLI, that's how we got involved. Is we had a conversation. We're neighbors. We had a conversation about dynamics and tone, and he said, "I just love Gary Moore and Parisian walkways and all this stuff." And I said, "Well, it's he had an amp and it couldn't roll down and clean up, And he was like, "Yeah, it's just really what I want out of something." I'm like, "That's what I'm dealing with, but we have the answer. I just need to build more." And he's like, "Really?" 5 years later, he helped me cut that casting box. So, okay, so we're talking about the Gary Moore stuff. You have the ability to it's just like digging in. I was a guitar teacher for 12 years, so I'm going to kind of shift modes. To me, it's about digging in and understanding the weight of every note, which is why I'm sure you love him as well. It's that emotional, every note is there intentionally. So, if I'm like... requires an amp and a guitar that you can just roll up and roll down and get those. And on this thing, if I go down, it's all dependent on my touch. So again, this is nothing new. I mean, that's what a narrow panel tweed will do for you. The problem is with the tweed, once you get to breakup, it's muddy and uncontrolled sometimes. But if you're playing like one of those Fenders back there, the cleans are great and it's tight, but it gets even worse as you get, through to blackface. Of course, Marshalls, the way Marshall solved that is, lots of gain, lots of shit, but there was no discernment. When you roll it down, it gets really thin and crinkly and
bit brittle.
Underpowered. Yep. Brittle, that's a good descriptor. Yeah, and so the challenge was notching this preamp into the hi-fi ear range where you had enough meat when you rolled down that the clarity was there, but not so much meat that when you rolled up and cranked it, it flubbed out. So on a spectrum analyzer, there's like 2 or 3 notches in the low end. I've measured this because, I mix. I have to see this stuff. It's weird. The things that you want to do to a guitar in a record, a mixing situation, already occur in this preamp. That's the simple answer. It's the same for an Ampeg B15 bass amp over there. That thing records instant bass line. Just add player. It's you don't need to do a lot to it. And I think that is the definition of a working amp, is you want it to do the job and you don't want to have to fiddle with the.
Yep. You need it to be intuitive.
Exactly. And so to close us out, I'm going to go through just a little riff montage of just different things that Plexi can do. And again, my pedal board you saw is over there. I'm not doing anything other than touching a volume knob, and my guitar is not stock. There's that. That's the point. But good stamping guitars. So we've got. I just played Sweet Home Alabama, and I started it playing it like a Strat, and then I dug in, and it sounds like 80s rock. It's all in the way you touch it. So if I'm playing the game, if I'm playing to that, then... Let's think here. American Woman. Let's see. if I can remember anything else. Thank you for being party to this without getting the real-time feed. Like I said, we got the recording too, but
No, that's great.
Yeah. And that's the end of it. That's all I got. I mean, I just went through a little tone range kind of thing from the neck over to the bridge and volume up and all that stuff.
That's cool. I'm super looking forward to getting that audio.
Absolutely. And thank you for the time and the questions.
Oh, no, look, Brian, thank you. Thank you for all your information. Thank you for all your time. Thank you for everything that you're doing to keep the spirit and the passion of all that work alive. It's invaluable to people that care.
I appreciate that.
Thanks very much for sticking to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do get a chance, if you can hit the like button or leave a 5-star review, that does help other people find the episodes. If you wanted to find out more about this episode, the guest, or any other episodes, head to the website bumpingintothatsound.com.au. There is also an online store, as we are the official Australian distributor for the Legendary Tones Hot Mod, the all-tube additional gain stage plug-in module for most Marshall amps. Head over and take a look. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope to catch up with you on the next one.